The case against paying college athletes. If we look at college athletes in the light of amateurism versus professionalism, we see that you can define a college athlete as an amateur. An amateur is somebody who practices an activity, especially a sport, on an unpaid basis. Also, they qualify as being incompetent as an activity. Now, what we mean as incompetent is they do not have the competence to be the best of the best at what they do. So, according to statistics, 2% of all NCAA student athletes move on to the professional level. So, therefore, 98% of student athletes do not meet the criteria of being competent at their sport to be a professional. Professionalism is defined as the practice of an activity, especially a sport, by professional standards, usually being compensated with a wage or salary. When you start paying an athlete, it becomes less about the game and more about the money. The motivation to become a professional is downgraded because they are already being paid. If we pay student athletes, their motivation to do well in their sport will become less of a factor because they'll already be compensated for it. Sports become a political medium where bigger schools can buy out better players from high school. We would see schools getting in bidding wars. We would see a bigger, way less parity within college sports once money is introduced, because then it'd simply come down to bigger and richer schools get better athletes, poorer and smaller schools get lesser athletes. Now, if we look at the student athlete versus the full-time athlete, a student athlete is a participant in an organized competitive sport sponsored by the educational institution where they are enrolled. They are students first, and focusing on education is their main priority. These student athletes are, just as the word is said, they are student athletes. They are not athlete students. They are students who compete in sports on top of their academic search. Some students are already getting paid with scholarships, and that pays for their education in full. You can see this as a sort of under-the-table compensation for what they do, but it doesn't go directly into their pockets. It simply allows them to go to school for free, and that is how we can see their pay functioning. It's not a wage or a salary such as professionals are paid, but it is some kind of compensation, but not directly paying them. Pro athletes, however, are paid for what they do, obviously, because that is what distinguishes them as a professional. They are paid for what they do. A study by Sports Illustrated showed that 78% of NFL players are either bankrupt or under financial stress within 2 years of retirement, along with 60% of NBA players after 5 years. So, by extension, if college athletes are paid the same way, expect more of them to go bankrupt or be under financial stress before they even get to the pro level. If you pay a college athlete in college, they'll be already going a little crazy with their money before they even get to the pro level, when they'll start making even more. And then that'll kind of, this time that we see, this time gap that we see NFL players and NBA players going bankrupt within 2 to 5 years of retirement would happen even sooner for college athletes, because they'd already be in that position to be spending money unwisely. Unessential versus obligation. Sports at a university level are unessential, which means that you do not have to play if you don't want to. You are almost voluntarily playing sports at the school of your choice. You are choosing to do that. It is not something that you have to do, such as taking classes. You are a student first, and education is the most important thing you are seeking to accomplish. If you really need the money, you shouldn't be an athlete, and you should instead get a job. The current payment, however, that we see for student athletes is what we discussed earlier. Scholarships is the main form. The average cost for a public in-state tuition in 2017-2018 was about $10,000 a year, not including room and board, which can be paid for by scholarships. Athletes receive scholarships, sometimes full-ride scholarships, which covers all of their student loans, and therefore they are able to graduate debt-free. So in a way, they are being paid. So in conclusion, student athletes should not be paid because, one, they are amateurs, they are not professionals, so by definition, they do not deserve to be paid because they do not meet the qualifications of somebody to be paid. Two, it introduces an avenue for them to be irresponsible with their money and spending. And three, in a way, they are already paid for their actions and their contributions through scholarships. That is the case against paying college athletes.